أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ورضي الله تعالى عن سادة التابعين وعلماء العاملين وأئمة الأربعة المجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته Alhamdulillah, we welcome you to this week's edition of the Black Imams Roundtable. I am Naeem Abdullah, Imam Masjid al-Mu'min, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. By my side is Imam Faheem Lee, Imam of the Quba School and Islamic Center, Camden, New Jersey. And joining us shortly, Imam Amin Muhammad from Masjid Muhammad of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Alhamdulillah. Before we get into our topic tonight, we request that you share, press like, do all that stuff. Let's get the algorithms jumping. Share it on all your pages. Different platforms, not just on Facebook and YouTube. Share it on your X, your Instagram, all that good stuff. TikTok, whatever you want. Share the link, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. We also would like to remind you of our commitment that we made to one another. We made the commitment that we will support and do for ourselves. In other words, anything that we want to do, any move we want to make, that we will fund it ourselves. And in that regard, we agreed that each and every one of us would put in $10, at least $10 every week, so that we can walk away with at least $500 every time we come together. So please, as you see at the bottom of the screen, the banner ticking across the bottom, and in the comments, are all the different ways that you can keep your end of the bargain. Cash App, Masjid Muhammad's donation page, Zelle, PayPal. We accept all that good stuff. So come up off of that bread, as my brother Imam Faheem always says. Alhamdulillah. So last weekend, Friday and Saturday, we gathered together at Masjid Muhammad in Atlantic City to elaborate, get some benefit and some takeaways from the legacy of Malcolm X. So we just came from that gathering. It went from Asr time on Friday, Yawmul Jumu'ah, until about Maghrib time on Saturday. And I believe that everyone benefited. Let me ask you all a question. Everybody in the comments, who was there? Identify yourself. I'm seeing some of the names. I know that some of you were there, but I want you to identify yourself. Who was there with us in Atlantic City Friday and Saturday for the Malcolm X program? Asma was there. Alhamdulillah. Fatima was there. Anthony was there. Anthony always there. I love that brother. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah. Who else was there? Okay, maybe you all are driving. Yuki was there. Yeah, I saw you. Alhamdulillah. Hamza was there. Yep. Alhamdulillah. I want to ask you, those of you who said you were there, what do you think about it? What is your takeaway? What is your opinion? What was your opinion about the weekend, your experience, the presentations, everything, all that good stuff? Imam, you was there. Yep, saw you. You know, subhanAllah, when my wife posted it on her page, we was driving through a lightweight snowstorm on the way there. Not nothing major, but still. Alhamdulillah, when we got on the other side of those mountains, it started looking better very quick. And on the way back, it was nice and sunny. We had warmed up. When we had got to Atlantic City, right, my car was all white, you know, all the salt and stuff. Everybody else's car in New Jersey was all clean and shiny and stuff like that. I had to take my car to the car wash. Can't be walking around all dusty, everybody else all clean and sparkling and stuff. Alhamdulillah. Asma says, extremely informative, especially the presentations. I learned a great deal. Alhamdulillah. I'm just saying, it was a beautiful introduction to what was yet to come. There was things that I never knew about him. It was very informative. Alhamdulillah. You know, subhanAllah, I'm not going to make my introduction too long. But one thing that I say about Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, as popular as he is, there's more that most of us don't know about him than we do know about him. I'll say it again. As popular as Malcolm X is, there is a lot more that most of us do not know about him than what we know about him. Years ago, had to be well over 10 years ago, there was a lecture with Imam Zaid and Cornel West. I forgot the title, but it had something to do with Malcolm and Martin. And in that presentation, Cornel West, he said that what we are experiencing with them is the Santa Clausification of these people, Malcolm and Martin. No Santa Claus. He was a mythological figure that non-Muslims believe is going to come down your chimney and give you gifts on Christmas Day. Old, big, fat, cuddly dude, right? So with Malcolm and Martin, especially Martin, but Malcolm as well, they Santa Clausified him. They cut out a lot of the potent reformative aspects of his history and left you with a trimmed down version, a shell of what really took place. Let me ask you all a question before I pass it to Imam Faheem. How many of you knew that there were chapters, at least two, maybe three or more, chapters missing from Malcolm's autobiography? How many of you knew that? That there are chapters, at least two, I forget the exact number, but maybe three or more, that are missing from Malcolm's autobiography. How many of you knew that? In the so-called conscious community is well known. They said she didn't know that. See, there's a whole lot of stuff we don't know. Anthony knew. Asma said she didn't know. Imadi said she didn't know. Hamza said he figured that. Samira knew. Issa knew. The last I heard, and this is well over a decade ago, the copies of those extracted chapters from his biography were being kept by some lawyer in his office, I think in Detroit or somewhere in the Midwest. See, Malcolm he didn't live long enough to see the final version of the autobiography. That's why some scholars say that they even challenge the idea that it's an autobiography. Some say leave the word auto out of it and just put biography in it, because Malcolm didn't approve the final version of it. Malcolm didn't approve the final version of it because he wasn't alive. I gotta check that link that Sufyan put up there. Yeah, but I just wanted to mention that fact because that fact is well known to people that's really interested in Malcolm and like really looks into his life. That stuff is well known to all of those people, but people that are not inclined that way, they don't know it. They think the autobiography is the end all and be all. A lot of it is missing. How many of you? I see Imam Otis there, Imam Amin. Wa alaikum salam rahmatullah. You're supposed to be giving the greetings on the screen, not in the comments, brother. What's wrong with you? I lost my train of thought. See, Imam Otis made me lose my train of thought. SubhanAllah. Oh,
come on, Otis.
I know what I was going to say. SubhanAllah. For me, I became familiar with Malcolm X in prison. Stories from the cell block. Boom. See, when the movie Malcolm X was coming out, I was somewhere in the middle of my sentence, right? And so, the movie X is coming out, Spike Lee joint, Denzel Washington playing Malcolm X. So there's a lot of promos and promotion and stuff going on. So I used to get all the popular Black magazines. I used to get, Ebony, Jet, Essence, The Source, Rap Pages. I used to get all that stuff, right? And so I'm seeing these movie promos come out. And so because of that, I had my people send me 2 books, Roots and Malcolm X. Both of them by Alex Haley. And I read both of them in the hole during Ramadan. Well, I think I skipped that part. I was in the hole at the time. SHU, the box, right? So I was there. So, 23-hour lockdown, shoe program. That's where I was at the time. And it was Ramadan. So during the month of Ramadan, I read the Quran, I read Roots, and I read Malcolm X. Those books changed my life. But one of the things I learned as a result of that was that if you know the chronology, Alex Haley collaborated with Malcolm X on Roots first. Malcolm X inspired Alex Haley to look up his own lineage. And that's what led to Roots. So Alex Haley is collaborating with Malcolm X. And some people say that he was passing information to the FBI when he was collaborating with Malcolm X. That's also well known too. Whether the word agent can be, because people like to get technical. Was he an agent or was he just passing information? Because his intent really agreeing to do Malcolm's autobiography is he was like a black conservative. And he wanted to discredit the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad. And so he thought this was a way to do it. But it seems like Malcolm ended up having more of an impact on him than he did on Malcolm. So he inspired Alex Haley to look up his lineage, which he did. And the book Roots came out of it, and the miniseries came after that. All that inspired by Malcolm. And so I just dropped that on you for my introduction. If you didn't do it already, please drop that bread and also share and like this feed as we get into it. Alhamdulillah. So I bring to you my illustrious brethren, Imam Faheem Lee. Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Inna alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa mursaleen. Sayyidina wa habibina ala Mustafa Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin. Again, I'd like to, just reiterate Imam Naeem's words and welcome you all to tonight's podcast of the Black Imams Roundtable, or a broadcast, I should say. I think podcast is when people is, I don't know the difference. We're sitting around just gossiping, I guess, But yeah, welcome you all to tonight's rendition of our talk, inshallah, the Black Imams Roundtable. We thank you all for joining us tonight. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it beneficial for us and to accept it from us. Amin. Yeah, so my intro also won't be that long. So just reflecting on the past weekend, mashallah, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. All of the stuff leading up to the week, to the conference or to the gathering. Just doing this research on El Hajj Malik Al-Shabazz, or revisiting it, it just brings out a lot of jewels, a lot of memories, and how his life transpired, and how many parallels that we were able to strike in our own lives, and many people who read about Malcolm's life and his work and his dedication and his sincerity, you have no recourse except to be touched, to be amazed at his dedication. So I know when I was rereading the autobiography, or maybe the biography of Malcolm X, it was just bringing back a lot of old memories. And then when I got to the chapter, the end, when he went into the Audubon ballroom, I had to kind of skip through that. It was just kind of just to read it. It was just really depressing. Of how that happened. But just uncovering these jewels, and then Imam Naeem, mashallah, had a wonderful presentation, two presentations rather, two PowerPoint presentations that was very informative. A lot of information that many of us didn't know, and and Imam Naeem, excuse me, Imam Amin put us on with a few books that we should get. That hopefully you all, in addition to the autobiography, I think that was one of them, to get those other books, inshallah, and let's challenge ourselves, because I'm sure we'll do this next year, inshallah, or something similar to it. Let's all try to get those books, and that we can all share information for the next event we have, because Malcolm's life has to be highlighted all the time, inshallah. I was thinking about something earlier. If you think about the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And of course, he is the greatest human being, the greatest example, the leader of the prophets, who has taught us guidance, who has come to show us the way. If you look historically, the people who have been great leaders in the Muslim Ummah, or icons, if you will, right? You'll find that most of them really had mimicked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his leadership very closely. Some of the great leaders, you find about, for instance, you find, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, Umar ibn al-Khattab, Umar ibn Abdulaziz, all of those great leaders, they were close to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in their stances, in their principles, and in their morality. And I think, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz can be included in that category, as a very efficient leader, a nation builder, someone who was dedicated, relentless, and continuing to struggle. And there were a lot of jewels over the weekend, and I thought it was very good. I had a nice time. It's always good when we can it's always good when we can meet with our 3453 family, who came from all over New York, Maryland, Toronto, Ohio. I know I'm missing a few. Detroit. People came from all over, mashallah, and it was very intimate, with our family there. And maybe we can convince Imam Amin, to put it online for those, because there are a couple of people who asked me from my community and other people. They wanted to know if we were, will we be broadcasting, or will we be sharing at a later time? So maybe that's something we consider, because since it's already done, we can put it online for others to benefit. But then that might be a bad move, because when we do our next event, you know how we are. We'll wait till it's after it's over. Oh, they're gonna put it out anyway, so I'm not gonna spend no money to come and support it, be in person. You know how we are, man. We are some special people, man. SubhanAllah. Any way to try to get over on something, may Allah help us, instead of recognizing what it is like to, really support the cause, because that was one of the things with, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, really getting people to support the cause, and, just thinking about where he was willing to go and ready to go, and where he could potentially have went had he been alive. I mean, that probably, mashallah, just thinking about the potential, and so, as I said, there was a lot of things that we uncovered in this research that was just jewels. And I remember one of the things that's remarkable to me about Malcolm's life, because, my life kind of like resembled that in some sense, being, user of drugs, carrying guns, all this kind of stuff. And, a very life-changing situation occurs, where you feel like, okay, you're in that game, and, a few years feel like a lifetime, and you're going through a lot of stuff, and then it all comes crashing down when they put those cuffs on you, and when you get, like you had the chapter called Caught, once you get caught, he said every hustler, that's the one thing they do to make sure that they try not to get caught. And once you get caught, the reality sets in, and there was one part in one of the chapters, I think it was, I forget the name of the chapter now, I think it was Hustler, or when he said he had an encounter. I think this one was with Freddie, or Sammy. I think it was Sammy the Pimp, or Freddie. I think it was Sammy the Pimp. No, yeah, it was Sammy the Pimp. So there was a story in there where he came to see Sammy the Pimp, one of the guys he used to run with when he was in New York, and Sammy had this girl. He had one of his ladies, and but Sammy was like kind of in love with her, and I think her and Malcolm had some words, and then Sammy pulled a gun on him. Sammy pulled a gun on Malcolm, and he was like, he like stopped him in his tracks. But then he said something about once one of your friends pull a gun on you, it's something different, and it's really not them, but it like things get serious, and I was reflecting on my own life, my own case. That's kind of what happened to me, and then I got caught, and the world came tumbling down, and then started searching for religion in prison, and came out and really got a grasp on to the deen. Alhamdulillah, I was able to learn. I didn't know it was default Wahhabism, but at the same time there was a level of brotherhood and studying that's incomparable that I haven't really found since I've gotten out. I mean, I found some good brotherhood, but that time being away and being immersed in books, and always got with something I got from Malcolm X's autobiography. I first read his autobiography when I was a teenager. I was in there's a juvenile facility here in New Jersey. It's called Jamesburg. It's called the Jamesburg Training School for Boys, and I first went there in 1988, and I was 17, and somebody had gave me the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I remember reading it, and then some of the things just, that stuck with me. Like, I remember this time when I got out, I would always have a watch on, because Malcolm X said he would never be caught without a watch or without a book, always being aware of the time, and not that I really paid attention to time like that because I was young, but I always had a watch, so some of those things stuck with me. And, and so really going through a transformation in the prison system, that really hit me. And then when I finally, as an adult, got arrested, some of those things started to come back. And then somebody had gave me another copy when I was in the county jail. So I ran through it again. And, it was just hitting like, man, this is like mirroring my life, man, out here hustling, running wild, trying not to get caught. And next thing you know, they got you, and it's like, and everybody know whoever ran the streets, you feel like, you're invincible. You can't be stopped. They can't touch you. And all the while, it's just a matter of time. And every hustler in the back of their mind knows it's just a matter of time before they get you, And so I then coming home and really going through a whole transformation, for me, after I became Muslim and I made a serious decision to not go back to the streets, even at the expense of ridicule from my friends, or who I thought, well, not my friends, really people that I hustled with, and so I remember hitting the streets and, and guys reaching out to me and were like, yo, man, what's going on, man? It's still money out here, man. We can, one guy told me, he said, we could get the empire back, And I was like, nah, I'm good. Oh man, you turned into a sucker, man. What's wrong with you, man? You turned into a nun? Yeah, bro. Right. So, that was very difficult. It was challenging because, the temptation was definitely there, coming home and making these adjustments. And, I remember Malcolm said he worked in, I forgot what the job he worked in when he first came home, but working in these jobs, going nowhere. I remember my first job, I think I was making $6.25 an hour. $6.25 an hour. I barely cleared $200 at the end of the week. And so, that was a crazy adjustment. I'm talking about, making, as a teenager, making $1,000 a day easy without any effort, until now, $200 a week. And then I was in a program. They had something that's called maintenance fee. So they took, I forgot what the percentage was. I think it was like 15%. And then you had to, count for all of the money that you spent, And so you can imagine what kind of adjustment that was. So I'm left at the end of the week with like $20 maybe. And it's like, oh man, let me go see my man and still see if they want to get the empire back or something, because this ain't working. But just stand to the deen. And I remember my sheikh, my imam, he told me one thing that I think that really helped me along. He said, no matter what you do, don't stop praying. Don't give up your salat. And that kind of stuck with me. So even, I had I came out okay. I didn't really get caught up in the streets no more. But I never stopped praying. And then I had to realize that I had to change my environment, So, I tried living in my neighborhood for a while, and I did okay, but it was like, it's not for me no more, because everybody associates me with the life I used to live. And now it seems like, to them, it seems like it's phony, but to me, this is the realest experience I ever had, is in praying and fasting, and, being an active Muslim was the realest, the most genuine thing that I ever experienced, and I wasn't ready to give it up to just make a few dollars, and so it just seemed kind of strange. The people I met, they was used, and it was almost like some of them were waiting, some of them were just waiting for me to, like, give up this facade, this is not you, you know what I mean? But I hung on, and then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he removed a lot of my peers, when I was down. A lot of guys I used to run with got a lot of, like, they call football numbers, 20, 30, 40 years, and a lot of them got killed, and so at that time, getting out and seeing all these things that were happening, I realized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spared me for a reason. And I realized that reason was to serve him, and to be sincere in it, and so I just stuck to the deen. And but just reviewing Malcolm's life and doing this program that we did, it was just so many jewels coming back, and man, he was really, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him as a hero for us, how to get through this thing, this thing in America, this thing that was set up for us to fail, and all the stuff that we see happen now, that, they were subjected to the same kind of things back then, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made his life miraculous in the way that he came through it, but I really had a good time seeing everybody. Like I said, a couple of people hit me up and said that they were very inspired by the program this weekend, things, and a lot of you said it on here tonight, a lot of things that you didn't know that you learned, mashallah, and, that will spark you to explore, because there's so much to his life, and especially in some of those other books that Imam Amin mentioned, and then start reading his speeches. He was, I just think about how articulate he was, from the time where he didn't even know how to really write, grammar properly, or no English, grammar, to, I forget what year it was. I think it was in 1963. And I think he was on that panel with those professors. I think it was in Canada or something. You remember Imam Naeem?
It was in the UK. He was at Oxford.
Yeah, Oxford. Yeah, he was in, and that was 1963, right?
I believe. I'll check.
Okay. But if you all go back and look when he was, like, on that panel with these professors in Oxford University, and how he was handling these people, man, like, with just so much finesse, so much confidence, like, I mean, just to see somebody like that come from where he came from, and to be up there and, really being articulate, and, knowing his stuff, and, putting these people in their place, these people be heroes for us. That's something major, yeah. And I just, just seeing these things and reviewing some stuff, it was just, and hopefully it sparked many of us to really go back and really study his life some more in detail. And but those speeches, Message to the Grassroots, The Ballad of the Bullet, and other speeches, and just seeing the change. I think Imam Naeem mentioned this, about how he was always ready to adapt, when he realized that he may have been wrong, or and you just imagine how difficult it is to be betrayed and then still try to move on, dedicating your whole life to a movement, and then they just ostracize you and marginalize you. And that stuff can be crushing. When we talked about cults and stuff, these are some of the things that make people kill themselves, or they go crazy, or they don't believe in nothing, And Malcolm, he continued to press on, and he was determined to, to fulfill his vision of, taking the United States to the world court, and taking our plight globally, And I was just reading, I was reviewing the autobiography, earlier today, just a little bit. And I was reading, they were after his death. I did read up some at the part after the Audubon ballroom. And like all of the presses that were reporting his death and some of the things they were saying. So they was talking about Malcolm in Pakistan and China and Russia and Germany, and they were mentioning some places they didn't really know who he was, but a lot of places around the world were very familiar with who he was and what his plight was and what he was trying to do. So he spoke at 1964, December the 3rd, 1964. And so And he was just remarkable in the way he was handling these people. But all around the world, people was understanding the plight. And just imagine where he could have went with that, and going in front of United Nations, and bringing United States to the world court, And I don't know if the United Nations was infiltrated at that time, but at least it was heard on the world's ears, about what's going on with us, And now in 2025, 60 years later, some of the things still ring out, well, the plight of us, and poverty, and being miseducated and discriminated against, and all of these things, we're seeing happen. We need to revisit some of those tactics and some of those ideals that Malcolm espoused, and how we get through this thing. And then now what makes it even better is that we do have traditional Islam that we learn. And so we have to, take this traditional Islam with the element of militancy, or being uncompromising, but also working with others, being kind to others, standing up for our family, being men, being people who are not going to lie down, and being people who's going to stand up for truth and justice for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, it was a great weekend. It was great to see all of the brothers who came, all of the sisters. We seen our young brother Uthman. He officially won the contest. I think so. Because come to find out, Sister Miriam, she knew that book since she was a little kid, and Uthman memorized it in one day. I think it was overnight he did it. So I'm rolling with him. Mashallah. But it was good to see. And there were some other ones. There were other people there that I know for sure got a few lines, but they probably felt, didn't want to be put on the spot. And I think by the next one, I think we'll be surprised with many of the people who will probably be able to recite the book from memory, and at a comfortable level too, mashallah. Yes. Seeing more people from the local community is something important. And, this is something that even we saw remnants of it in Malcolm's life. The people locally may or may not be supportive, but if he's taking this on the world stage, people from all over the world, all over the country will come in to hear El Hajj Malik al-Shabazz. So, and I just had a great time. I was very delighted, especially when we get in person, so we can gaze on each other, get good energy from each other, pick up things from each other. The breakout session was really good. I think we kind of cut it short, but it was getting really interesting, and just to see, we had some of the young people participating, Many times we think they're not really listening or paying attention, but when we got in the breakout circle, some of them were very articulate about, what they learned in the presentations. And yeah, it was great, man. And I can't wait till we do another one. We might have to, I don't know if we could have did 3 days. What you thinking, man?
Yeah, I think we could have.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure that, the Imam Amin will agree, and I know Imam Naeem would, that maybe we need to do one every year. We need to do one every year. Yeah. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe we can as a Jamaat, on Malcolm X's born day, May 19th, inshallah, we can try to go and make a visit to his grave. Since they already saying we grave worshippers anyway, hey, might as well, go make dua at his grave, inshallah, for him. And maybe we can arrange that as a Jamaat and make that a nice outing to, put the hearts together. But yeah, this research, and so like for my two talks, I was basically using the autobiography, right? But next time I'm going to make a commitment to review all of those books that Imam Amin mentioned, and plus other books, and I'll collaborate because Imam Naeem, this is his forte, the life of Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, and so he has a lot of references that I'll be hitting him up for, inshallah, and so we can really make it better the next time, make it a little longer, probably, a couple more presentations. Hopefully we'll have some other speakers who if their schedule permits, inshallah. There were a couple of people who were supposed to come that we were anticipating, but, for whatever reason, they weren't able to make it. MashaAllah, we ask Allah who is subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward them for the intent. But so we can have a bigger panel and everybody, can reflect on the life, because so many outlooks and perspectives you can get, with the life of Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz. And even some of you, I think those breakout sessions will be great next time, because I mean, on sidebar conversations, a lot of people are just, really picking up a lot of stuff, man. And some of our people be holding back, they know some stuff, man, and just, share, because, we need enlightenment as well, but alhamdulillah, I really had a great time, and I look forward to the next one. And also we have the next program coming up in April. I don't think the flyer is done yet, but inshallah, we all come together again. That'll be after Ramadan, and looking forward to us meeting up and enjoying each other's company, inshallah. Okay, yeah. So don't forget to drop that bread. Make sure, help us to, I was reading. I hope that's not our case when we when our time to go. They had one of the headlines in the newspaper, Malcolm died broke. I don't know if it was the Amsterdam News or something, but don't let that be us, or at least don't let what we're trying to do just stop, Yeah. So, and these things take money, they take finances, and as you all know, we use what we're able to get, to be able to do the things that we need to do to keep us free, to keep us independent, and to keep, no one has to tell us what we have to say, or we have to check in with anybody, because it is by Allah who's subhanahu wa ta'ala's grace that he puts in the hearts of the believers that prompts them to donate, is what really helps us, And so we ask you to increase, as in preparation for the month of Ramadan and receiving, a multitude of blessings, try to give for 2 or 3 people if you're able to, try to give for 10 people, which helps us reach the goal, because even though we put a goal, we should try to surpass the goal. We should try to go past the 500, and as you all know, collectively, that's not a lot of money, but collectively it's a lot of hasanat, collectively it's not a lot of money, but collectively it's a lot of hasanat to help us to keep going, inshallah. And we ask Allah who subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq. So that was my intro. So I'll turn it back over to Imam Naeem.
Alhamdulillah. Imam Faheem mentioned, he said that Malcolm X is my forte. Actually, I'm very rusty. I gotta get back on him. But there's a reason for it. Because for me, Malcolm X was key in changing me. Like I mentioned earlier, just to give you some more context, back to the prison, back to the cell block. I mentioned earlier how while I was somewhere in the middle of my sentence, in the middle of my bid, and the movie was coming out. The movie came out while I was locked up. And so I said that I read Malcolm's autobiography and Alex Haley's Roots during that time while I was in solitary confinement. You know, Roots, Alex Haley basically traces his ancestry back to the African who was enslaved and brought to America. His name was Kunta Kinte, right? So at that point, and I was trying to remember, I'm pretty sure it was 1993 in the winter that I read this, right? And I don't know what it was, but reading those books, I wasn't illiterate, but I wasn't a reader either, right? But reading those books, Allah used those books to place a love of reading in my heart. I think up until that time, I had only read one book in my life, at least one book that I could remember. And that book was 1984 by George Orwell. I read that in school, right? But I can't remember any other book that I've read up until that point. And at that point, I had been Muslim for about 2 years, maybe a little less, something like that. So I remember reading Malcolm X, Roots, and I came out of those books a different Muslim. Before I read those books, I was just Muslim. You know, I prayed my 5 prayers, but I describe myself as a passive Muslim. But after I read those books, I've been an active Muslim ever since, till today. And I love reading and knowledge and all of that stuff because of Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz. But look how Allah works. I said that this place knowledge and love of knowledge and reading into my heart after reading his autobiography and Roots. Roots, Kunta Kinte, Africa, Gambia to be specific. 23 years later, I'm in Gambia. And it wasn't until I got to Gambia and said, yo, this is where Kunta Kinte was from. Like, what? Oh, yeah, his village. You can go see it on the tour. Like, tourists go there. Oh, we going. All right. And now when I take a tour, when I go to Gambia, either when I take a tour or if I'm bringing some family out there that has never been there before, I always take them to Kunta Kinte's home village, Jufude. Always. And so for me, spiritually, that's like coming full circle. 23 years later, 1993 to 2016, when I first went to Gambia, like subhanallah, like wow. And in my mind, in my heart, that's all Malcolm. Because Malcolm inspired Alex Haley to do his lineage, where we even know about a Kunta Kinte. And Kunta Kinte is from a scholarly family. His grandfather was a muhajir, one who made hijrah from Mauritania. Very scholarly family. There's a lot of stuff people don't know about that, but that's a whole nother story. But we wouldn't know nothing about that if Malcolm X, is because of Malcolm X and his interaction with Alex Haley. So alhamdulillah. So that's why I always had a love in my heart for Malcolm X, because I credit him with my transition from being just a passive, regular Muslim to an active Muslim. And like I said, I've been active ever since. And so I attribute that to Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, and this is decades after he had already been martyred. One thing that you mentioned, Imam Faheem, that I think was very important, innovative, and I think we should do more of it. Like we had in the program, it was baked into the program, even though we skipped a couple of sessions, but that we were going to review and learn Aqidatul Murshida by Abu Mansur ibn Asakir, rahimahullah, who died 620 after Hijrah. It's a small poem on Aqidah. Not this gathering, but the one before that. Imam Amin had us all begin memorizing it. And so when Imam Faheem mentioned that we were memorizing and there was a contest, that is what we were memorizing. A very short, if you put the all Arabic on one page, right, it all fit on one page. So all of us who come to these events, these programs in person, this is what we are doing. We're trying to memorize that. And welcome, marhaban. And one thing that I've learned about this blessed text, and when I learned it, it was like a aha moment. When a lot of people, if you know history, the Crusades and all of these kind of things, you know the name Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, or like the Kufa call him Saladin, right? Saladin, Salahuddin, right? And they say, yeah, the Muslims take pride in him because he took back Al-Quds, Palestine, Jerusalem, back from the Crusaders. He fought a noteworthy opponent, Richard the Lionheart, beating them so bad, like sometimes, you're in the street, right? And you beating somebody up and you knock them down and you pick them back up again so they can keep fighting, right? You ever see somebody do that? Right. Well, Richard the Lionheart, he got sick. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi sent him his own personal doctor to come treat him and heal him, right? So people that know that history, they know that, yeah, Salahuddin, he took back the Holy Land. He ran out the Crusaders. And then they also say that he was able to do this because he unified the Muslims. He was able to do this because if you know that time period, this was a time period where you had a whole lot of dynasties, emirates, and all with different creeds and all kind of stuff going on. And so Salahuddin al-Ayyubi got in power, and he unified a large section of the Ummah. He was like, yeah, we need to be like Salahuddin and unify the Muslims. Yeah. How do you think he unified the Muslims? He got them all unified on one creed. That's the part that the Muslims who know that history, they selectively forget that. He was Ashari. If you're on my Facebook page, I did a brief bio on him. He was Ashari. And not only was he Ashari, that it is documented by several scholars during that time and afterwards, that in all of the lands that he had control of, he used to have the muezzin, the one who calls the adhan for the morning prayer, for the Fajr prayer. Before he actually called the adhan, that he would read the Ashari Creed. And what book did he use to read the Ashari Creed from? This poem, Aqidatul Murshida, that Imam Amin has us memorizing. And so for years, even after his death, the muezzins in all of the lands, Egypt, Sham, that he had control over, in the morning, before the morning prayer, you learn the basics of Aqidah, creed, coming from the minbars, not the minbars, the minarets of all of the masjids. Very, very, very important. And so when I realized that this particular text was used for that purpose, I had a aha moment. So I think this is a good thing that we are memorizing this text. So all of you who've been to the last couple of programs in Atlantic City, don't give up. Continue memorizing this text. It's extremely important. It's very concise and it's brief. And so, alhamdulillah, I won't keep talking. Our brother has finally arrived. So I'll turn it over to Imam Amin, but I think Imam Faheem got something he needs to say real quick.
Yeah, Imam, I mean, you gotta wait. You coming here late, think you just go close the show out. We held it out down for you. Open the store. You know what I mean? We sold milk, eggs. We sold, you know what I mean, cat food. I just want to say one more thing, but just to Imam Naeem's point, yeah, I always had a love for reading. I remember one time one of my mom's sister was, you know, she used to point out that when they were riding cars, you know, back in the 70s, we had the cars with the one seat, everybody had to move up at the same time. I will always be looking at words and signs and trying to figure out what it says, you know. So I always had an affinity for reading. And even when I hustled, like I remember when I was sitting on the block and we pitching out there. I remember a brother gave me this book that's called The Life of Muhammad, that big yellow one, Muhammad Haikal. It was like 600 pages. And I had read halfway. I had read more than halfway because I got up to the part about the when the Prophet ﷺ went to Taif, right? And when I read that part, and I was like, I'm in there, I ain't even paying attention to the police or nothing, undercover DTs, I'm like, man. And I remember thinking to myself, is this like a real person? I never heard of nobody like this. And I always read, I remember reading Animal Farm, 1984, Charlotte's Web. That was my book, Charlotte's Web, man. A lot of books I used to read outside of what was required reading. And I remember reading this book and I was taken aback. Like, man, cannot be a real person. I never read anything about any kind of like hero or nothing. Like, you know what I mean? And then when I got locked up back then, you used to be able to send books from your house. Like you didn't have to go through a publisher. Like if you had books in your house, somebody could just come down there to the county jail and they can leave them for you. And so I remember calling my mom. I was like, I need that yellow book. And the other book this brother gave me was called The Lawful and the Prohibited in Islam by Sheikh Yusuf Qaradari, right? And I don't remember that book too much because I wasn't officially Muslim, but that Life of Muhammad, and I heard there was some problems with the book. I never really followed up on it. But yeah, when I read that and then I finished reading the rest, and I was like, wow. And then I finally read the Quran. I mean, I read it in English, but I read it from cover to cover. And I was like, man, this is amazing. Like, and I started wondering, like, why these people that was saying they was Muslim never told me this stuff, man? Like, because we was all on the street, they probably, But and then I read the autobiography again, and then it sparked me to read all of these other books. Like now I got time. So before, I mean, I always read, but I was in the streets, not even thinking I was going to be alive. And so I read. I remember now one book I did read on the street because we was on some militant type of time, a little bit, Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. And I remember reading the book. He was talking about how to use use plastic as bulletproof stuff to from bullets, and how to take down helicopters and some stuff he was saying. I had to read that again too, but it was like, and we was talking crazy stuff like, we're gonna get to the police, man. And back then, 89, 90, that song was very popular. PE was out, and all of the conscious rap, that kind of raised me. So reading those books, and then I read Seize the Time by Bobby Seale. He had a book called Seize the Time. Then I read another book, the prison writings of George Jackson. It's called Soul Dad Brother. I actually just listened to that on an audio book not too long ago. And then I also read Roots. So here's a funny story about Roots, because and I think I mentioned this on here before, but in Roots, and Alex Haley was not his African heritage, but in America, when Kizzy was sold to the slave master in the movie, if you all remember, I'm talking about the old Roots. In the movie, in the series, the master's name was Tom Moore, Master Tom Moore. But in the book, his name was Tom Lee, Lea, from Spotsylvania County. That's where my people are from, right? And so I never paid no attention to it, right? Because I was reading these books when I was locked up, so I never paid no attention to it. So come to find out years later, and I'm, when I was a default Wahhabi, all that black stuff, no, you don't think about your history. So I never really pursued it. But in some recent times, especially when my father passed away in 2008. And so I was doing some research on the lineage. And then I remember reading in the Roots book that the master's name was Tom Lee. And he had a slave, not just Kizzy, but they had other slave girls that they used to visit. One of the slave girls was named Maria Lee. And Maria Lee had a son named Tom Lee. This is my great grandfather. My great-great-grandfather. Yeah, so, and now, after I read that book, never paying attention, and come to find out, so I have some kind of connection to Kunta Kinte, and so now, I think about it like, why I was always like, militant. I love militant stuff and resistance and being insubordinate, and and then the other part of my family is Native Americans, indigenous people, Saponi and Okanichi. So in case if y'all was wondering, I descended from white people. Nah. I descend from Africans and Native Americans. All right. Because I know y'all thought, with Fuja. Yeah, but just thinking about all this stuff and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed all of this stuff together. And now I'm here as an Imam talking about Malcolm X, who told his story to Alex Haley. This stuff is really amazing, and then meeting people like my fellow Imams who have the same kind of drive, like Allah don't make any mistakes, and that He's put us in this time, in this moment, to discuss this with people who trust us as leaders. I mean, that's deep, man. But I just wanted to mention that because and it just made me start really exploring my history more. And so now what's intriguing me now is the Native American side. So I gotta find a ruling, because you might see me at one of these powwows one year, because they do I don't know the ruling on it, but I'm definitely gonna get me one of those chief hats, right? So I'm gonna connect with my people down there, inshallah. So, but that's just important, and that lineage. And when I start tracing it back and be able to name your lineage from, generation to generation, yeah, that's remarkable. So I just wanted to share that before Imam Amin goes on.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It's my pleasure to finally be able to join you. I was in a political meeting with the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, Mayor Ras Barak, and he is running for governor of New Jersey. And we were at one of his meet and greet affairs here in Atlantic City, and listening to his platform by which he is running for governor of New Jersey. And, after the weekend of our Malcolm X legacy retreat, you know, one of the things that Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz mentioned is that we have a choice of the ballot and the bullet, or the bullet. And he said that the ballot is much more effective than the bullet. So, you know, I thought it is in line with continuing actualizing what we were talking about, that as an imam and the only African imam in Atlantic City, New Jersey, that it was imperative that I attend and show a level of support of who a person who is running for governor and would only be the second African-American governor in the country. I want you to think about that. Of all the states in the United States, there's only one African-American governor. If he is successful in New Jersey with the help of us and other residents of the great state of New Jersey, we would make an historic thing, because he will be the first African-American governor of New Jersey and only the second governor in the country right now. So where we lost the White House, that doesn't mean we can't get local state houses and local cities and counties. We have a lot of work if we're going to live the legacy of Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz. So I want to encourage those who are in the state of New Jersey to get involved. One of the biggest tricks that have been played on African-American Muslims, and I say it with no reserve, somebody told us that we're not black anymore. I'll repeat that 2 more times. 3 is sunnah. One of the biggest tricks that have been played on African-American Muslims, black Muslims, is someone told us that we're not black anymore. In another version of that, one of the greatest tricks that have been played on African-American black Muslims is someone taught us that we're not black anymore. And hence, we feel as though the plight of the rest of our people is not our plight, because we said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. And once we said that, we became other than ourselves. And I don't know who told us that fabrication, but it is exactly that, a fabrication. So I encourage you, wherever you at around the country, to get involved, because we have a racist problem that we're facing even within Islam. I repeat, we have a racist problem that we're facing even in Islam. We have a racist problem that we're facing even in Islam. And we have to correct it. And what we learned from Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz is that he wasn't afraid to speak the truth, number one. And he wasn't afraid to call out injustice when he saw it. And number 3, he wasn't afraid to do what was necessary to make the change, even if it cost him. A lot of us, especially our black Muslim intellectuals, they pander to non-black entities because that's who pay them. And we know the old saying, whoever funds you, runs you. So because they're in the pockets of others, they can't serve us. They can't even see us. And if you can't see someone, as the Honorable Mayor said, you can't see one, you definitely can't serve them, because you can't even see them. And so I warn you tonight, I'm on one. I'm on one. I've been on one all weekend, but there is an effort to steal the narrative of Malcolm X. And I heard Imam Naeem, may Allah protect him, indicated when he said they're trying to make Malcolm Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz some kind of Santa Claus figure. In other words, they're making him somebody that's impotent, that is incapable, that is a tap dancing, shoe shuffling, smiling when there's nothing funny, pandering to those who don't have his interest. And that is a great, grave injustice to his legacy. And I say it like that. And tonight, and we ended the gathering with these ideas. This is not the night for a tap dancing Negro Muslim to listen. It is not the night. Tonight is going to be a night where I lay it out, because we are suffering as a community. We are suffering as a people in this country, and we are suffering as a community as Black African-American Muslims. We are suffering, and we all know it, and it's time, high time, for us to address it. So this has a general level for us as a people, and it has a personal level for me for some conversations I had over the last 2 days that really, really told me that somebody didn't get the email that we not slaves anymore. Somebody missed that email. They didn't get it. That text message, that phone call, they missed that. Black Muslims are an independent people. Imam Naeem, can you put that in there? Black Muslims are an independent people. And I need us to realize that. It's important. Because if we don't realize that, all of our matters will be dictated and subjugated by someone else's agenda that has nothing to do with us. Their concerns will be addressed at our expense. And our concerns will never be addressed because they will occupy us with being their servants. I got to say it how it is, because somebody has to say it. And then a group of us have to do something about it. We are a free people, an independent people who have concerns, who have objectives, who have visions that need to be respected. And for my non-African American and Black Muslims, I'm talking to you too, because if you not like that, you need to engage and change that state of affairs. You have a responsibility. I want to read a couple things because it tells you the mind of Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz during the last week of his life. To me, that's the most significant moment. What you talk about before you end your life. Because we get all these videos and books and lectures, and all of that, a lot is a transformation of Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz over a period of time. But when you look at the last week of his life, the last month, you can say if you want to expand it, but really the last week, and see what was on his mind and see how he ended his life, you get to kind of see what we need to do. So I want to read one of the last things he wrote prior to him being assassinated, rahimahullah ta'ala. So one of the books that I think all of us should read, and it's just some of his speeches and some of his letters. It is February 1965, The Final Speeches, Malcolm X. This book, and you have to read a series of books to really get a good picture, but this one he was talking to Muslims. So this was specific, international Muslims. So he wrote on February the 13th, he started this, and he wrote it to some questions that was given to him in November of 1964 when he visited the Islamic Center in Geneva, Switzerland. And it was an Arabic magazine, a monthly magazine titled Al-Muslimun. That magazine is very important in political context. And we'll talk about that because a lot of us don't understand how others have always used us for their politics. And Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz was no exception to that rule. In fact, it was an all-out effort to get him to lean into other people's politics. And what you can admire about him is that he was wise enough, despite that diligent effort to hijack his work in life, he never forgot us. That's important. There was a deliberate effort to hijack his work for their political aims, for their ambitions. It was an all-out effort from many different organizations and groups and sects to take this man who was a hero for us and to use him to further their agendas. And when they saw that he was not that type of person, they abandoned him, which is how he ended his life. Abandoned. I want us to pay attention to that. How did he end his life? Abandoned by those very people who praised him. That's important, something that we should understand because Malcolm X represents us as a people, even though he's an individual. So the abandonment of Malcolm X and the betrayal that he experienced is really a betrayal of the people he represented. And we need to understand that. And that betrayal hasn't changed. It's been modified, but it's the same betrayal. So this magazine was started by a man named Saeed Ramadan. Imam Naeem, I need you to help me so I don't have to type. Can you put Saeed Ramadan? He was the director of the Islamic Center in Geneva, Switzerland. So he was the one running that. He's an Egyptian man, and he was a leader of the Ikhwan al-Muslimun, or the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, which has its own political aims and things. And that is not the discussion that I want to have tonight, but I do want to have that discussion because history only repeats itself if you don't learn from it. So this was the person he went to visit. This was his contact person. He was the son-in-law of the founder of the Ikhwan Muslimin, Hassan al-Banna. He was his son-in-law. He was married to Hassan al-Banna's daughter. So he was very close, and he was like his private secretary, right? So he was at the top levels of the Ikhwan movement. So they prepared a list of questions to Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz. And I want you to understand this. These ain't stupid Arabs who don't know nothing. I'm saying I'm kind of being explicit for a purpose because I want it to be shocking so you listen. I need that shock aspect to it so that you pay attention. I don't want you to zone out because some of us like when we just, that's what we liked about Malcolm. We liked the fact that he'll punch you in the mouth with his words, right? We like that. So it keeps our attention. So I'm going to employ that means of expression. So sometimes it may come a little bit, sound a little rough. But these were very intelligent, educated people. They represented the intellectual class of the Egyptians and the Syrians and all of the Arabs. They represent the intellectual class that wanted reform. So they're educated in Europe, in America, in the West. These are very intelligent people. They are political, they move, they do what they do. So it wasn't they are targeting Malcolm X for an agenda. This ain't somebody who don't got an agenda. So even the questions they ask, they are formulating policy based on his answers. You must understand how this works. So one of the first questions they asked him, question, the Black Muslim movement is one of the most controversial movements in the United States. Having been for a considerable period its main organizer and most prominent spokesman, could you kindly give us some concise firsthand picture of the background of this movement, its history, its main ethics, and its actual strength? In other words, monkey, let me study you. This is the first question you got for me? You want to dissect me like I'm a frog? Think about it. There's a million questions you get to know somebody without prying into them. That's a deep question. First of all, I know who you is. You don't have to tell me. You're the main organizer and the most prominent spokesman. So I know y'all fighting. Guess why? The government done told me about y'all. My connection to the United States. I already know who you are. So give me a first-hand picture of y'all. Your background of your movement, its history, its main ethics, its actual strength. I'm studying you. I want you to think about that. I'm studying you. Why are you studying me? Listen, you're studying us for what? I'm going to give you what Malcolm later on saw. This is in November he's getting these questions. I'm going to move to January and show you what he found out. And you got to read through all the lines to get this stuff. So they asked him this question. Mind you, these are the educated class of the Egyptians and the Arabs. They're the educated class. At this time, remember, Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz doesn't speak Arabic. They have a tendency, this is an Arabic magazine. I want you to follow this. So he can't even read what they actually going to do with this information. He doesn't have the ability. So he's being studied, and he said it. One of the most things that troubled me when I was abroad is that people would be speaking and I would have to wait for somebody to translate for me. I felt like a little kid. You remember this Imam Faheem in his writings in the autobiography of Malcolm X when he mentioned this stuff? So imagine what you're up against when you're being questioned like this, and they're taking that in another language that you can't check. Something to think about. So Malcolm answers and gives some answers, and I don't want to concentrate on all that, but that's the first question. So he gives them this information, lays it all out. The second question: what were the reasons behind Elijah Muhammad being against you immediately after the assassination of Kennedy, and then behind your breakaway from the movement as a whole? These people, the Ikhwan movement, challenging governments, the government of Egypt. You remember this with Sayyid Qutb and Anwar Sadat, and this is a movement. They are messing with government officials, CIA, FBI. They're in it. These ain't some innocent Muslim that's just, right? You're dealing with the top political opponents of the Egyptian government in that time. And if you come to our time, we see all of this. So these are not uneducated and people who are not thinking politically with these questions. There's something, these are loaded questions. Very loaded. He answers, right? Then he asks another question. Should these differences be of a basically ethical nature or on central matters of faith? What, in your opinion, are the prospects of radical reform within Elijah Muhammad's followers now or in the future? I'm not reading all the answers intentionally. I want you, because it's long, I want you to just think of the questions first. Does this sound like an interview or an interrogation? I want to ask y'all, does those questions sound like an interview of brotherly love or an interrogation to see where y'all at as a people? Because they're not talking about him. They're talking about us, the Black Muslims. They're trying to study the Black Muslim. For what? That's a logical question. You're asking, because they ain't asked you, brother, well, how you became Muslim, and they got all that intel already. They need some detailed intel for their objectives. And the questioning indicates that. So he answers that. Because I'm getting to it. The next question: have any of Elijah Muhammad's followers left the movement with you? And do you think that your breakaway from the movement has affected its main body in any considerable way? All right, what was the effect of this division between y'all? Right? How do we get in to know how to divide y'all? How do we get inside to put y'all against each other? And what will be the outcome of such intervention from our part? Our intervention in your affairs. What would that do? Have y'all fighting each other? And who's going to go where and why? I want you to pay. This is in the 60s. Because I'm going to bring this up to our present in the 90s. And this game is the same old game. I'm pointing the things out to you just by the questions. Then he asks, do you plan to just stop at voicing your opposition against Elijah Muhammad and his group? Or do you have any course of action in mind towards establishing some new organization in the field? If so, on what basis and for what specific near or distant goals? Now that you got away from him, what you gonna do? And what's your plan? And if you go back and before all this, you notice that Malcolm, whenever they would ask him, he said, we don't give our plans. That's the root. We don't tell you about the root of the tree. They're asking him your roots, how you move, what's your infrastructure, what's your makeup, how is your support? You're asking real questions. Next question. So he tells them about the Muslim Mosque and the Organization of African American Unity. He's telling them, innocent brother, trying to thinking someone's your friend. We Muslims, we all together. I'm sharing. Question, what have you been actually doing since you broke away from Elijah Muhammad's movement? Then he tell him about his movements, going to the Middle East, going to Africa, right? Trying to get a better understanding of the deen, help my people, right? Next question. Is it true that even after your breakaway from Elijah Muhammad, you still hold the black color as a main base and dogma for your drive under the banner of liberation in the United States? How could a man of your spirit, intellect, worldwide outlook fail to see in Islam its main characteristic from its early days as a message that conforms beyond doubt the ethnological oneness and quality of all races, thus striking at the very root of the monstrosity of racial discrimination. Endless are the texts of the Quran and the Prophet saying to this effect, and nothing would testify to that more than the historic fact of the heterogeneous races, nations, and linguistic entities have always mingled peacefully in the homeland. You still talking about black stuff? Do you know the whole movement of the Ikhwan is Arab stuff? Listen to that question and then think of who's asking it. A one who's been fighting for Arab freedom from dictators, according to them, or oppressors, for Arabs. Not just Muslims, Arabs. But he asks him, are you still on black time in our language? Can't you see that Islam is not black time? The reverse question should have went back to him. Can't you see that Arab nationalism is not Islam? I noticed you didn't get that. I want you to pay attention to this stuff, because we're still living it. And remember, I started, who told us we not black no more? Well, these type of questioning, because it was questions, then it turned into a statement from the Quran and the Sunnah. Hey man, you can't be on black time. But you ain't reading our Arabic papers, our magazines that talk nothing about Arab pride and Arab nationalism and Arab education and Arab economic and Arab this. Go read the papers. Now here's what I say. Bring those magazines, and now we not there no more. We know Arabic. We can read Arabic. We have many of us who study. Now read those same magazines that you're quoting these things and see what it says. And see if what I'm saying is not true. Read the same magazines. Read the historic record. Right now, go to their conventions, go to their masajid, go to their gatherings, go to their organizations, and see if it's not the same thing that he was telling Malcolm X. Don't you know better, boy? Don't you know better? Well, if I know better, why don't you know better? Why the double standard? And that double standard still exists today. To this day, it still exists. And every single one of us know it, have felt it, can identify it, can see it. Every single one of us. But they've silenced us. They've silenced us. We feel it. We do, no doubt about it. The next question. And I'm hoping you go read the whole thing. So, because we need to become a literate people where we start reading and understanding and challenging. And I would like someone who disagrees to take a link and come on and let's discuss it. And I would like it to spread. You disagree? I want to challenge that. I would like to have that discussion publicly. I really would. Because Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, he used to engage in dialogue and debate and discussion, right? He wasn't afraid of that. And I don't think we should be either. And this is not a worthless conversation. It's a needed conversation. It's a needed conversation because the Black intellectual class, specifically the Black Muslim intellectuals, are in those circles playing Bojangles. Most of us are not in those circles. We ain't in those circles. We're on the grassroots level of things. So we're not having real right? But when they're in those, and I listen to them, and I don't want to call no names out, but I listened to several of those Black Muslim intellectuals, and I wanted to throw up after listening to them when I really thought about what they're saying. Really bad. Really bad. But the crowd they're talking to is not us. They're talking to the ones who are undermining our efforts, undermining the struggle of Black people in general and Black Muslims in specific, because we're closer, supposedly. So it's something that needs to be addressed. And I think these questions that they asked him are very telling. And his answers shows us his swiftness, rahimahullah ta'ala. So here's the next question. Is it true that even after your breakaway from Elijah Muhammad, you still hold the Black color? That's the question, right? Remember the Black color as a main base and dogma for your drive under the banner of liberation in the United States? You still talking Black stuff. Look at his answer. I will read this answer. He said, as a Black American, I do feel that my first responsibility is to my 22 million fellow Black Americans who suffer the same indignities because of their color as I do. Let's move that forward. That's 1965. He's answering these questions, right? As a Black American, I do feel that my first responsibility is to my 22 million fellow Black Americans who suffer the same indignities because of their color as I do. If that was in 1965, we're up to 41 million Black people. Shouldn't it be more relevant today? If he was concerned and said, and this is 1 week before he dies, and he finishes it the night before he's assassinated, he says, that's my first responsibility. Why did we forget that? Why aren't we our first responsibility if Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz is our hero? And if those who say my Islam, if it wasn't for Malcolm X, if it wasn't for the autobiography of Malcolm X, I wouldn't have been Muslim, then where is your commitment to those 41 million Black Americans today? Because that's what he said. And this is his last, like almost you could say his last and final testament to tell you as Black people to love yourselves. He said, that's my first responsibility. He said, what? Because they're suffering the same indignities that I do because of what? Because they Black. He realized that. How did we get to he didn't care about color? How did we get there? You see how a narrative can, this is a week before his death. This is his mission. He's talking to Muslims. Then he goes on, and I think this one is significant. He said, I don't believe my own personal problem is ever solved until the problem is solved for all 22 million of us. And I should say, Imam Faheem should say, Imam Naeem should say, and every single one of us should say, I don't believe my own personal problem is ever solved until the problem is solved for the 41 million of us. If we're really talking about Malcolm, we really talking about the struggle. We're in the era that we're in today, so it's more significant for us to realize what we must do. Hence, that's why we have a Black Imams Roundtable. That's Malcolm X. That's him right there. That's his words. That's not Amin Muhammad. That's Malcolm X. It's doubled. So shouldn't the concern double? If the numbers have doubled, shouldn't the concern double? Shouldn't the efforts double? Shouldn't the resources double? Shouldn't the access double? The numbers have doubled. He's talking about 22 million, 41 million. And that is growing. But when I finish reading, and this will be a long one tonight. Then he goes on. I'm going to finish reading, inshallah, quickly, and I'll pause. He said, much to my dismay. That means he's not blind. He sees it. He sees what's going on. He sees it. Much to my dismay. Until now, the Muslim world, not talking about the African-American Black people in this country, the Muslim world has seemed to ignore the problem of the Black American. This is before he died. He remember Hajj, remember all them stories you tell us about? Remember all this? He went over there and everybody was all love and blah, 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 blah. And what does he says? Much to my dismay, until now, the Muslim world has seemed to ignore the problem of the Black American. Okay, 2024, 25, February. We're still in February. This is February 25th. This was February 20th when he last documented and finished up these questions. I want to ask you the same question. 60 years later, has the Muslim world still ignored the problem of the Black American? That's a question. Yes or no? Yes or no? Has the Muslim world still 60 years later, 2025, neglected and ignored the problem of Black Americans? That's a yes or no. Please answer. Please, it's over 100-some people that I can see, and I know it's more who don't say anything. Please answer that question. The problem has doubled because the numbers have doubled, but the situation is the same statement from 1965. Now, here's the next thing Malcolm said following that, and I'll stop there for a moment. And then he continued, and most Muslims who come here from the Muslim world have concentrated more effort in trying to convert white Americans than black Americans. Talk back to me. Talk back to me. And most Muslims who come here from the Muslim world have concentrated more effort in trying to convert white Americans than black Americans. This is 2025. Where are the majority of Muslims that came to this country? Where are their masjids? Where are their institutions? In the white community, in the suburbs of the white community, or in the heart of the cities where the black people exist? Tell me where they at. Answer. He said it in 1965. He observed that and he mentioned it. Are we not still observing it in 2025? Are we not? Let's keep it real. Let's be honest and deal with facts. Since we really love Malcolm, we really say that we are with him and we believe in his mission, when we going to address this elephant in the room? When we're going to force our brothers in faith to be brothers, while we still do what we got to do, but we're not going to leave that alone because they blamed him for that. Why are you still talking about black and this? And look at the plight of the 41 million black people. But for sure, they want us to rally around their issues while they ignore our issues. And they've been ignoring our issues ever since they stepped foot on this country. You know, I constantly am reminded, because sometimes I got crossover ability. You know, you cross over in the music. You could be pop artist, R&B, you know, you cross over. Sometimes I have that. And some people in my community remind me, they say, Imam, Amin, they love you, they don't love us. Whoa. Imam, Amin, they love you, they don't love us. That's deep. Imam, Amin, they love you, they don't love us. If you not here, they out of here. Wow. That's hurtful. That's something to think about. I'll pause. Because I pause there. Because that's something to think about. I got another thing I want you to read about the same people so you can see how it ended. It's long. I don't want to take all your time. This is just to give you something to think about. Because we have work to do. It ain't stopped with Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz. We still got a lot of work to do to carry on his legacy. But sometimes you got to speak raw truth just for somebody to see you, just to see you exist, just to hear you, you have to shake the boat, rock the cradle, flip the table over so that a new table is built that is a table that is available for us to sit at. Sometimes you got to flip the table over so we can have a seat. Build a new one, flip the one that's there, build a new one, and say, we want a seat at the table. You know, the mayor of Newark, Ross, he said something tonight that struck me. And I was sitting with one of my companions. And when he said it, I was like, dang, he just hit it on the nose, because we talk about it all the time. He says, some of us, Black people, we just want to sit next to power. We don't want no power. He said, some of us want to sit next to power. We don't want no power. We just want to say, I'm next to boss. I'm next to the man. I'm not the man. That's deep. So some of us is just glad to get on the stage while the rest of us ain't even allowed in the building. I'm going to repeat that. Some of us are glad to just get on the stage when the rest of us are not even allowed in the building. And it's high time that we talk about this. And some of us know we're in those big, fancy Islamic communities that have nothing to do with us. And we're just glad to be next to the power. I don't have any power. I'm just here. I'm not out in the field with you. And Malcolm, our beloved brother, talked about the house Negro and the field Negro. Well, we have the house Negro Muslim and the field Negro Muslim. And as he said about, I'm a field Negro. And as we say, we field Negro Muslims. We different. And I'm intentional in the words I'm using, because I know I want you to say, oh, they on that Black stuff. Yeah, and I want you to get off that Arab, Bengali, Pakistani stuff. Since you want us to get off the Black stuff, which we've never had the opportunity to be on in the first place, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. We've been off that, but we've been a victim of you being on it. We've been off that, but we've been a victim of you still being on it. And I'm going to let you know this is a coded talk. I'm actually sending a message to some people. So I hope you spread it. Because we need to prepare ourselves for battle. And it's called Jihadul Bayan. Please write that up so they don't change my words. We need to prepare for battle. And it's called Jihadul Bayan. And you know what that means? It means the battle, or you can say the war, or the struggle of clarification. We need to clarify some matters, because too many of us are silent in the face of a devil. And they are shayateen min al-ins wal jinn, from the humans and the jinn. And we all know it, but we don't want to deal with it. But we need to deal with it. We must deal with it, because Trump and his administration going to show us something. Mark our words. They're going to show us that we needed to have this discussion. Because when their program gets going, don't forget last time. History only repeats itself, and they learn from the past. That neglect that we receive now, they're going to be knocking on our doors in our masjids, bringing us food baskets and book bags, saying, hey, brother, you remember me? And we need to stop selling out for food baskets and book bags and smiles and token honorariums and demand brotherhood that Islam promised us when we accepted it. That for far too long, people have neglected to give it to us. This is a fact. And I challenge anyone who want to debate it, because we're only going light. We could go deep. Because, you know, we are those people that will say, oh man, he's so radical. Oh man, on that black stuff, we Muslim, we on Quran and Sunnah. Yeah. So should everyone else be. Go around the country like we do and see the condition of the black Muslim community. And some of us don't have the fortune to go around the country and see the others' communities, whether they're immigrant or white, and see as comparison to what's happening to the black community. Look at the black Masjid. Look at the blacks, places where they learning. Black Muslims, because we are Muslim. Look at our conditions. And I'm not suggesting that we don't play a role in that. That's another aspect of the conversation. But I'm talking about what we signed up for as a people. Because we've been dealing with racism our whole sojourn here in America. So we know how to deal with racism. But what we've done is we came to Islam and thought there wasn't no racism. We actually believe that false narrative that someone lied to us. And now we're living the nightmare of that false dream they told us. We're living it. It's not Islam. Islam is perfect. Islam is complete. Islam is just. But human beings who claim to hold the banner of Islam, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Yeah, Latif. That's a whole nother story. And I think we need to consider taking the reins of Islam in this country. I honestly believe that. So that we don't go off the side of the mountain. I think we need to really consider about taking the reins of this religion. The days where we talk about, oh, we don't have no knowledge. Yeah. Well, why y'all keep going overseas and studying for? You know how many of us that went overseas and studied? So many people, they got PhDs from their universities, master's degrees. You did all that and you still can't lead a people? What they teaching you then? That's a question we should ask ourselves. We're 40 years, 50 years of going overseas and studying. Where are our leaders that we can rely on to guide us through this madness? So maybe we ain't been getting a proper education, and we need to look at that. We don't need to keep repeating the same thing and not learning nothing. That doesn't work. So maybe we need to be calling out our own to step up to the plate. While we address the injustice, but we should address the deficiencies within ourselves as a people. Because everyone else is building nations and land and business and opportunity and institutions. If we're not careful, we're going to be annihilated. And we're going to be subjected to someone else's framework of what Islam is that doesn't include us. We better be careful. I'm going to stop there. I still have a whole nother letter to read, but I'm going to give it to our brothers. And please indulge me in one more hour, because that's what it's going to take for me to finish. Maybe a little less, but if one got to check out, I was late. So I'm asking for some free overtime. You don't have to pay me, just let me do overtime.
A little less.
Go ahead, my brothers.
I only want to underline something that you said. Haj Malik Shabazz was betrayed and abandoned. And Haj Malik Shabazz, yes, he's an individual, but he represents the rest of us. And if you look at most of our sincere leaders, they go out betrayed, and abandoned. Betrayed by who? Betrayed by people close to them. I can go on and on and on with examples of different individuals who betrayed Malcolm. Abandoned by who? The greater Muslim community. And they also betrayed him because they made him promises that they didn't keep. Malcolm was dealing with them as if, or on the basis of, we trying to build Islam, we trying to work for Islam. They were talking like they want to work for Islam, but as Imam Amin said, they got other agendas. And during our time, it's the exact same thing. A lot of our so-called Muslim brothers interact with us as if our interaction is for the betterment of Islam, but they have other agendas. Because if the agenda was Islam and if it was about the Muslim community and the Muslim brotherhood, you wouldn't see our communities abandoned, undermined, taken over in some cases, or allowed to just disintegrate and go away if we were all Muslim brothers. So I just wanted to, I don't have anything at this point to add, but I just want to emphasize betrayed and abandoned. Well, a lot of times we're betrayed by people close to us. There's a whole list of names that Malcolm thought he could trust that betrayed him when he needed them. I'll give you an example of one betrayer. Farrakhan, Louis X at the time. When the whole thing came out to Malcolm's knowledge about the secretaries, Malcolm went to Farrakhan, not to like create a scandal. Malcolm went to him like, yo, this thing looking bad. You know, we have to do something. We have to create a narrative to create our organization, to protect our leader. They flipped it and went to Elijah, yo, Malcolm's spreading lies about you. And they already knew about the stuff. They already knew about the secretaries and all that kind of stuff. They already knew. And so that tells you, again, the integrity of a real leader. See, that when Malcolm found out about them secretaries, that bothered him. When Farrakhan found out about them secretaries, so what, man? They got secretaries every day, man. That ain't the problem. We're gonna milk this gravy train. He trying to mess it up for us. See, that's the difference between certain leaders. Malcolm, that was bothering him. And I know I said I wasn't going to talk too much, but Malcolm felt the personal responsibility. I mentioned it here before. Malcolm got some of those sisters their jobs as secretaries. One of them was his ex-girlfriend before he even got locked up. Her name was Evelyn. And Malcolm's sister, Ella, actually wanted Malcolm to marry her. She thought that Evelyn was best for Malcolm as far as compatibility. She was cool with Betty, but before Betty came into the picture, she really liked her. But Malcolm, for whatever reason, chose not to marry her. And Malcolm gave her dower, got her into the nation, and put in the word, got her a job as a secretary. And then this happens. So Malcolm felt responsible. And I don't know, but I think that part when they dramatized it in the movie, when the guy approached Malcolm and after the lecture, and he said, "Are you Elijah's pimp?" Right? I think they were kind of alluding to that. If you know the history, he could have been alluding to that whole situation. Because what does a pimp do? A pimp, facilitates people to get with women. So Allah knows best. But Malcolm felt a personal responsibility. Everybody that knew Malcolm said Malcolm was about what he taught. It wasn't just rap or rhetoric to him. For a lot of these other people, they were corrupt. Malcolm wasn't corrupt. He had integrity. And so, again, betrayed and abandoned. Muhammad Ali abandoned Malcolm X. They dramatized that in the movie. Even I think in Muhammad Ali's movie, I think the one Will Smith played in, I think they dramatized that. Muhammad Ali, later on in life, said himself, he says that's one of the things he regretted he did, abandoning Malcolm. That hurts when people close to you abandon you. People that's holding your babies in their arms and real close with your family and stuff was there when you won the heavyweight championship of the world. And right there, Malcolm talked about, I was sitting in seat number 7. And they interviewed Malcolm after Muhammad Ali beat Cassius Clay. He was right there. That was their sort of like honeymoon, him and Betty, with Muhammad Ali. Someone that close. And abandoned him. But like I said, I'm not taking shots at him. He himself said that. He regretted that. But that just goes to show you the sincerity he had. His sincerity was to Elijah Muhammad, even though he was close to Malcolm X. But what's the point? Abandoned. When you doing this work, don't expect to have a whole lot of people with you. People are going to abandon you and betray you for whatever reason. And as Black folk, Black Americans, Black Muslims, right? Don't look for a whole lot of help from the Muslim world. They're already neglecting you and abandoning you. Talking like we do, they're not going to rush to you in crowds and support you. They're going to abandon you if they haven't already. Don't forget that. Betrayal and abandonment. Alhamdulillah.
So I want to read this letter because those questions I asked, remember that's November the questions that I read. That was November. That was given to him in November 1964 when he went to the Islamic Center in Geneva Convention. In Geneva, Switzerland. I want to put context. These are people with a lot of money. They got money. They're fighting governments. They got money. These are engineers, doctors, various professors, business people. This is a well-oiled machine talking to Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz. They're in different countries doing stuff. They're in America. Don't think they're here. They're in the White House. They're in Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Princeton, Yale. They're all over the place. They established themselves. They're around. They're available. So he's not talking to poor people. He's talking to people without resources. They're graduates from different Islamic universities. They travel. They on international Muslim councils, and they're in it. He's not talking to nobody. Now, in this book, that's why you got to read. It doesn't tell you who is leading this effort, right? It just tells you about a magazine. So if you don't know no better, you wouldn't know who the magazine is, who he's talking to. He's talking to the leader. Now that's November. So in 1964, November, December, January 1965, he writes a letter. To me, this letter, and if Imam Naim, you have a link to it or somewhere, I wish you could put it in there so they can read it like themselves. But I'm going to read the letter. To me, this letter is the most heartbreaking letter I've ever read from Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz. To me, this is the ultimate betrayal. And he expresses it in his nice way. But when you put this in context with a line that he says in the autobiography of Malcolm X, the autobiography, he said this on the 15th. A month later, after writing this, after going through that, while he's answering those questions, I want to read this first. Alex Haley writes, Monday night, Malcolm X spoke to an audience in the familiar Audubon ballroom. If he had possessed the steel nerves not to become rattled in public before, now he was, and he quotes him, I've reached the end of my rope. He was tired of this stuff. He said, I've reached the end of my rope. He's going with all of this, and he's also dealing with us fighting each other. He addresses that in another book, trying to undermine the movement, doing things that's going to not let us go forward as a group. He's addressing that. He's addressing the black problem. He's addressing politics. He's addressing stuff going on in the South. He's addressing racism. That as they said, the American dream has become American nightmare that he mentioned, that Dr. Martin Luther King mentioned. And now he's realizing that Arab dream, you say, has become a nightmare. Can I get that? Let me see. Oh, I don't know how we're going to make that bigger. That's small. That ain't going to work. Oh, you can bring it in. Okay, yeah. You can move it, move bigger, make it a little bit bigger, and I'll read it so they can see it, and then just move it down when we, you got it? See, that's why you the genius. That's good enough. They can see it. So he says, it's called Letter from Malik Shabazz to Director of Islamic Center in Geneva, Switzerland, January 11th, 1965. So you're talking about 1 month and 10 days before he's assassinated. Now he's answering these questions the day before he's assassinated. He's finishing them up, right? To send them back. So this is coming out later. He's assassinated the next day when he finishes these questions. But a month before he answers, he writes a letter to Dr. Saeed Ramadan. And I told you at the beginning who he was. He was the leader of the Ikhwani Muslimin, and he was the son-in-law of the founder, Hassan al-Banna. So he was a person of great influence. He started that magazine. He did stuff all around the world. He was a man of stature. Malcolm, our brother Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, rahimahullah, he says, my dear brother, Assalamu alaikum. May these lines find you, your family, and the believers there in the best of health and enjoying wealth and happiness according to the will of Allah. I was very pleased to receive both of your phone calls and honored at the invitation to speak there in Geneva. It is always a blessing to be able to tell the world what Allah and Islam has done for me and for our people here who have accepted it in America. You notice, he says, he's talking about black people. He's concerned about black people, our people. Then he continues, he said, since my return to the States, I have been very busy trying to get the Muslims reorganized into true Islam. And as the enclosed clippings show, I've been meeting great opposition from Elijah Muhammad faction. For he fears that if Afro-Americans hear true Islam, his own followers will then be able to compare it with what he is teaching, and that they will then leave him. So he is willing to see murder committed to keep true Islam from getting properly organized. And most of his wrath is directed at me because he knows I'm one of the very few people who understand the basic psychology of our own people here well enough to organize them. So I'm kept busy trying to get our people together, while at the same time, I'm kept quite busy just trying to stay alive. That's his mindset he's going through. Then he continues, also upon leaving the Black Muslim movement, we left all of our treasures behind in that movement. Thus, we are very poor, and everything we do, we must do with almost nothing. And this makes it doubly hard, but still Allah is blessing us with success. We don't have no money. We're struggling. We're poor. He's identifying the state of his community, of his people, trying to get true Islam. He's talking to people who have abundant access to wealth and resources. He's not talking to somebody who can't help. He's talking to somebody who can help. This is why I said I would come to speak in Geneva, but would not be able to pay my own way this time. That means he went before and he paid his own way, and he's paying his way. And we learned before that when he went on all those pilgrimages, he still owed his sister money for paying for it. But he celebrated, but no support. We was the only one supporting him. His family, the little bit of money we could scrape up to do the work, that's us. Sound familiar today? Sound familiar? He said, in fact, at the present time, I don't not see how I am going to be able to make Hajj this year, All the finance we can scrape up is needed for our reorganization work here. We don't got no money. We're scraping up money. And if you see the fundraising efforts in the books, you can see he was going hard trying to get $1, trying to get $2, struggling. He says, when I was in Saudi Arabia, what kind of money is in Saudi Arabia? In that time, it was still a bunch of money in Saudi Arabia. They are wheeling and dealing. He says, when I was in Saudi Arabia, His Excellency Syed Umar As-Sakaf, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, promised their government would help us to rent a suitable place here. But I've heard no more from him. What month was that when he went to make Hajj? That was way back in April of '64. I'm going to show you some stuff. He couldn't get the money. He's renting out of a hotel for his organization, renting the ballroom, renting. And he's celebrated around the world, our hero. He couldn't even own his own place. And he's traveling the world. Europe, Arabia, Africa, giving talks, universities, and they own them universities. If you study, he met a lot of those university people to travel abroad from. He met them from going to do lectures on the university campus. People know about him. He said, but I've heard no more from him. Do you know him? If we had stronger support from the Muslim world, it would be very easy for us to spread true Islam here in this country. If we had support. I must dash off to a meeting right now, but we'll look forward to hearing from you real soon. May Allah bless all of you. The believers here, join me in greeting you. Assalamu alaikum, Malik Shabazz. Now I want to tell you something. He got this message. This message reached him. A month later, he still don't have a place. He doesn't have a home. His family's homeless. He doesn't have any savings. He doesn't have any support. They got the message. But the same thing, the message he got in Saudi Arabia, we're not helping you, was the same message he got from Geneva, from the Ikhwan, we're not helping you. We're only examining you for our agenda. We're only using you for our agenda. We're not going to help you, sir. And we didn't. You want the dalil of that? After his assassination, they still didn't get no money. And the organizations, both of them, eventually collapsed for no support. And so when I told you, someone tells me they love you, they don't love us. Even if they really love Malcolm, which I highly doubt, because it manifests to a practical application of support, a practical application of brotherhood, which Islam calls for. We ain't see that. And it manifests afterwards because it didn't exist. And we still don't see it collectively today. So I wonder, how true is it? It's something we have to really honest questions. And we can't consider it a crime to ask real honest questions and demand honest results. I put it that way. When you come asking us, remember this talk. When they're finished with the Border Patrol for a certain segment of the population, when they come for you, because they're coming, don't forget this talk. I would suggest, just as you plan and lobby for all the stuff you lobby, I think you should plan and lobby how you're going to support your brothers that you're going to need in a minute. That's my suggestion. But you don't have to do that, because we have to do what we have to do. And Malcolm said it best. I want to share it with you. Where is that at? I marked it. There was a line he said that I really found interesting. This was on March 12th, 1964. He was talking about the movement of, the Muslim Mosque and the OAAU. He said, whites can help us, but they can't join us. There can be no black and white unity until there is first some black unity. He was a wise man. He was telling us something. He was a visionary. We can't expect nobody to do for us what we won't do for ourselves. So everybody talking about unity when we better learn to unify first for ourselves. That's him. It's Malcolm X, the one you said you love so much. The one who, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have became a Muslim. He said that. That's a quote. That's him. That's his words. Not Amin Muhammad. That's him. He said it. And he was Sunni. Remember? He said it. So my challenge to us, despite whether they wake up and be real brothers and sisters in Islam and be just as concerned for us as they want us to be, as they demand that we be concerned for them, as they demand that we be concerned for them. Justice necessitates that they be just to us, that they be concerned to us. That's real brotherhood. Other than that, it is a dream that has turned into a nightmare for many of us on the ground. And I received some phone calls. I won't go into the details of these phone calls. From some people telling me what we should be doing. And you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. And I stopped them. I said, "Oh, what have you done for us that you feel the privilege and the authority to tell me what we should be doing?" I said, I really want to ask that question before you give me any, because last time I checked, you don't fund us, so you definitely don't run us. Last time I checked, you don't fund us, so you definitely don't run us. So what are you really saying? And it made me, that narrative, that arrogance, made me really, and plus what we did, made me really think about this thing. And there are a lot of other things I could mention that I won't, but we need to have racial reform among Muslims in this country specifically. We desperately need a conference for the restoration of brotherhood in Islam. Desperately we need it. And to address the issue of racial, ethnic, and economic, political oppression, and unfairness. While we still do what we do, we still got to do our work, and we're going to do our work. But we're not going to say, because we're doing our work, we're not going to address this injustice. Because ultimately, this is our religion. This is our way of life. This is our deen. And if we can say the same thing that Al-Hajj Malik wa Shabazz was saying in the 60s, and we're double the numbers, we have a problem that we need to address. And I don't think one of us would say we can't speak this. We could just change the date. It's the same conversation. We could change the date, change the names of the players. It's the same conversation. So I think what I would like to get across, a legacy of Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, is that we continue his fight on every level, in every aspect, because they tricked us and took us out the game. But I guarantee you, ain't none of them ready to really have this conversation. At best, they want to do is do revisionist history to distort the historic and present record. But many of us, I don't know how long we got on this earth, but we should stand for justice while we're on it. And justice dictates that you make the change. We are always open for brotherhood and unity and support and cooperation. We're always giving that. But we don't receive it. And maybe there is a need for us to reconsider our giving nature until we see some return on our investments. I think we need to consider that. And take that investment and that energy that we give out and build our community so it's a community of respect. So when they come to us with some respect. And there's always the exception to the rule. There are some beautiful people among Allah's creation that are not like that. And we need to join hands with those people. But the exception never became the rule. The exception never became the rule. It is just that, an exception. We need to fix the rule, not excuse the rule because there are an exception. No, we need to fix the rule so that the rule is fair, the rule is just, and the rule reflects the true spirit of Islam. And Allah knows best. I hope you got some of my point, if not all of it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Well, alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan, Imam, for that. So are we still going, or you take some questions, or?
If there are some questions or statement, we can, but I'm done for today.
Okay.
I have a lot more, but we've been long enough. We leaned on the people an extra half an hour, 40 minutes. So, if they don't have questions or statements or whatever, we can.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Brother Sufyan had a question about a good reading list for Imam Malik Al-Hajj Shabazz, Malcolm X.
Inshallah, we'll put that out because we still have the books. I need to bring them. I didn't bring all of them. I left them in the Masjid from the conference. But we'll put them. We'll slowly put them out so you'll be able to get them. Inshallah. Maybe we should combine maybe we could do that, Imam Naeem. Put together a complete beneficial reading list that we think would be helpful of understanding. Because I'm reading a book now that it has some things. It's a biography. It has some things that I've never heard, but I saw alluded to in other books. But so, because you can read, the problem is the challenge in reading Malcolm X is that it was just like his life was evolving and transforming, developing stage by stage, so is the study of his life, right? So there are so many things that we need to touch on, especially as Muslims. We haven't really engaged Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz. Collectively, we have done a disservice to him in terms of evaluating the material related to his life. So even, the Islamic aspect under Sunni Islam, we ain't even addressed that properly. And that's been hijacked. It's never been critically examined, right? Because a question I asked myself today, and I asked one of our elder imams that Friday morning, as I was preparing for the first day, I asked one of our elders imams, let's make dua for him. Imam Talib Abdul Rashid from MIB in New York. May Allah give him shifa. Let's recite Al-Fatiha for him, inshallah. Al-Fatiha. – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – is in a way a successor of Al-Hajj Malik Shabaz's work through Sheikh Tawfiq, who actually got one of those scholarships of Malcolm X to go to Azhar in Egypt. So in a way, they kind of carry that baton to the best of his ability. But now being a senior imam and not able to do what he used to do, I asked him a question. I said, what do you think, if he was alive now, where would he engage? That was, he's not alive now, except through us. So considering that should tell us where we need to engage. And he said he would be on all fronts of our struggle as Black people. And it would be on all fronts of our struggle as Black people, not just Black Muslims, Black people, because he said he never left that. So that tells us we need to be on all fronts of our struggle. And we need to examine all these fronts critically and engage in all of them. Our religious, our social, our political, our educational, and every aspect. Because we are being used, and we need to wake up to that. We're being used like pawns on a chessboard, And we need to stop being pawns, and we need to become king and queen. And we start moving the pieces around. We need to consider that. And as Muslims, we need to start where we can start close. Reform. We need Islamic reform. Not token accommodations that mean nothing and go nowhere. I'm going to accommodate and tolerate you, but really, please, just be quiet. No, we want change. We demand change. And I think we need to reconsider something. This is the only land we know. We should demand our share of the land. Everyone is fighting for land all around the world, petitioning for land, our this, our that. But we remain landless, cultureless, and it's no problem. No one cares about that. No one says, what about restoring their land to them, or giving them, or providing for them access to the same land others stole and took? And we know this landscape very well, so why not get our environment here? Why not build our institutions here like others are building their institutions on this land while telling us go somewhere else? Ain't that a trip? They're building institutions, Islamic institutions in the suburbs, in their communities, mixing with the government, mixing with accreditation boards, doing all of that for them. But for us, go somewhere else where you're not going to never have power. You're going to be next to power. When you were the ones who fought for the very access that they're using to establish for themselves and forget you're the ones that established the portal for that. But you don't get it. It's time we stop. You know that our elders used to say, I'm old enough to not have to watch what I got to say. You may say that. I'm old enough when I ain't got to watch what I got to say. I'm grown. And you know something? We need to feel that way. Because we're not saying nothing that's haram. It's true. And the Prophet ﷺ told us the meaning of speak the truth, even if it's bitter. Speak the truth, even if it's bitter. So I know this is a bitter pill to swallow. Maybe we should speak the truth so we don't have to swallow bitter pills at all. May Allah grant us some understanding. Yeah. I'm not satisfied with this state of affairs at all. And I think we need to spend our energy changing it, because people have a lot of nerve to come to us and dictate to us, or try, demand from us, tell us what our position should be, while they don't care nothing about us. And they show it. And they only say astaghfirullah when we call them out on it. So maybe we need to keep calling them out so that becomes real tawbah and not verbal gymnastics. That it becomes real tawbah and change. Because when you say astaghfirullah, when you make tawbah, you're supposed to change. You don't supposed to do the same things. It is an actual change. When someone makes tawbah to Allah, there's a change. Something is different. Not 60 years later, the same stuff. May Allah grant us wisdom. Tayyib, I'm done.
Alhamdulillah, wa shukrillah. Imam Naeem, you have anything before we close out?
I'm done.
Okay.
I was just about to send one of y'all to the store, but it looks like you volunteered.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Imam Amin, for coming in and bringing that fire tonight. MashaAllah. We really appreciate you. We appreciate the listening audience, riding with us. Alhamdulillah. We hope that you all really got the benefit out of this past weekend's program as much as we enjoyed presenting it and doing the research and bringing to you some jewels and points. And inshallah, we look forward to our next program. Is the flyer ready yet, Imam?
Not yet. We still recovering from this weekend. Okay. Inshallah, give us a week or two.
Okay, well, inshallah, just stay tuned. We'll be right back. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this from us. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka anta sami'ul alim. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us and to pardon us and overlook our faults and to raise us up with the righteous folk. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send abundant prayers on his prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us all a good end. Amin. Al-Fatiha. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.